When my ex-husband sent me a wedding invitation, I knew it was meant to humiliate me. He wanted to show everyone how I'd fallen after our divorce. But what he didn't know was that my life had completely changed, and I was about to give him the shock of his lifetime. If you've ever felt underestimated or written off by someone, this story will give you chills. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss what happens next. Trust me, this revenge is absolutely perfect. My name is Laura, and 3 years ago, my world fell apart when my husband Jake decided I wasn't good enough for his new successful lifestyle. Today, I'm going to tell you how that devastating moment became the best thing that ever happened to me. Jake and I met in college when we were both broke students sharing ramen noodles and big dreams. We got married right after graduation in a tiny ceremony that cost us $300 total. I wore a white dress from a thrift store and he borrowed his father's old suit. We were so happy, so in love, and so naive about what money could do to people. For the first 5 years of our marriage, we struggled together. Jake started a small marketing company from our one-bedroom apartment while I worked 2 jobs to pay the bills. I believed in his vision completely. When he worked late nights, I brought him coffee. When clients rejected his proposals, I held him while he cried. When we could barely afford groceries, I told him we were building something beautiful together. Then, everything changed. Jake's company landed a major contract with a tech startup that exploded overnight. Suddenly, we went from counting pennies to having more money than we knew what to do with. Jake bought expensive suits, a luxury car, and moved us into a mansion in the hills. I thought we were living our dream, but success poisoned Jake in ways I never saw coming. He started making comments about my appearance, suggesting I get plastic surgery or hire a personal trainer. He criticized the way I dressed, the way I spoke, even the way I laughed. When we went to business dinners, he would introduce me as just my wife while spending the entire evening talking to younger, more glamorous women. The breaking point came at his company's anniversary party. I had spent weeks planning my outfit, getting my hair done, trying to be the perfect wife he seemed to want. But when we arrived, Jake immediately abandoned me to network with potential clients. I spent the entire night standing alone by the appetizer table, watching my husband flirt with his business partners' wives and daughters. On the drive home, I finally confronted him. Jake, I feel like I don't even know you anymore. We used to be a team. His response shattered my heart into pieces. Laura, look around. Look at what I've built. I need a wife who can match my success. Someone who fits into this world. You're still acting like we're broke college kids. The divorce papers arrived a week later. Jake's lawyer made it clear that since the business had been built during our marriage with his ideas and my support, I was entitled to almost nothing. The prenup I'd signed years earlier when we were poor protected his assets. Now that he was rich, I walked away from 8 years of marriage with my clothes, my car, and a heart that felt like it had been put through a shredder. After the divorce, I moved into my sister Amy's spare bedroom and tried to piece my life back together. The hardest part wasn't losing the money or the big house. It was losing the man I thought Jake was. Realizing that maybe he'd never been that person at all. Maybe success had just revealed who he really was underneath. Amy was incredible during those dark months. She let me cry on her shoulder, brought me ice cream when I couldn't eat real food, and gently pushed me to start thinking about my future. Laura, she said one evening as we sat on her couch watching old movies, you're the smartest person I know. You helped Jake build his empire. Now build your own. That conversation changed everything. I realized that during my marriage, I had been the one handling Jake's schedules, organizing his meetings, managing his relationships. with difficult clients, and even writing many of his presentations. I had business skills that I'd never given myself credit for. I started doing freelance consulting work for small businesses, helping them with organization and client management. The pay was terrible at first, but it felt good to use my brain again. I worked from coffee shops because Amy's apartment had unreliable internet and I couldn't afford an office. 6 months after my divorce, I was sitting in my usual corner table at a little coffee shop downtown, frantically trying to finish a presentation for a client when my laptop decided to crash. I was about to lose hours of work and I had a deadline in 2 hours. I must have looked completely panicked because a man at the next table came over and asked if he could help. He was tall with kind eyes and wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans. Nothing about him screamed wealth or success. He looked like any other office worker grabbing his morning coffee. "I'm pretty good with computers," he said with a gentle smile. "Mind if I take a look?" I was desperate, so I said yes. This stranger, who introduced himself as William, spent 20 minutes fixing my laptop and recovering all my work. When I tried to pay him, he waved me off. "Just buy me a coffee sometime," he said. That coffee turned into lunch the next day. Lunch turned into long conversations about business, life, and dreams. William was incredibly smart and asked thoughtful questions about my consulting work. He seemed genuinely interested in my ideas, which was something I hadn't experienced in years. For 3 months, we met almost daily at that coffee shop. William would listen to my business plans and offer suggestions that were always spot on. He had this way of seeing solutions I'd never considered and understanding market dynamics that impressed me. I assumed he worked in business consulting, too, maybe at a larger firm than mine. I was falling for him, but I was also terrified. My divorce had left me feeling like I wasn't enough for a successful man. I kept waiting for William to lose interest, to find someone more polished, more accomplished. Instead, he seemed to like me more with each conversation. One day, I was telling him about a potential client who needed help scaling their tech startup, but I felt out of my depth with the technical aspects. William got quiet for a moment, then said, "Laura, I need to tell you something. I haven't been completely honest about what I do." My heart sank. Here it comes. I thought, he's married. Or he's not who he says he is, or he's about to disappear like every good thing in my life. "I own a tech company," he continued. "Actually, several tech companies. I'm what people would call a billionaire, I suppose." He looked almost embarrassed saying it. "I didn't tell you because I wanted you to know me as just William, not as someone who might be useful to your business or impressive to your friends." I stared at him in shock. This man who bought his coffee with crumpled dollar bills and drove a 10-year-old Honda was a billionaire. "Are you serious right now?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a Forbes article with his photo. William Chen, tech entrepreneur, estimated net worth $2.30 billion. I felt dizzy. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand, "I've spent my whole adult life wondering if people liked me or liked my money. With you, I got to just be William. You fell for the guy who helped you fix your laptop, not the guy who could write you a check. That's incredibly rare in my world." William and I were married 8 months later in a small ceremony with just Amy as my witness and William's business partner as his. I didn't tell my parents or anyone from my old life. I wasn't ready to deal with their questions or assumptions. After what happened with Jake, I needed to know that this relationship was real before I shared it with the world. Our twins, Emma and Ethan, were born a year later. William was the most devoted father I'd ever seen, changing diapers at 3 o'clock in the morning and reading bedtime stories in silly voices. He supported my consulting business, which had grown into a full company with 12 employees. I loved that I had built something entirely my own, something that had nothing to do with being anyone's wife. For 2 years, I lived this incredible double life. To my family, I was Laura, the divorce, who was doing okay with her little consulting business. To Jake's family and our old friends, I was the ex-wife who had disappeared after the divorce, presumably because I was too ashamed of how far I'd fallen. But in reality, I was Laura Chen, successful businesswoman, mother of twins, and wife to a man who treated me like I was the most important person in his world. I kept my maiden name professionally, and William and I rarely attended public events together. It wasn't that I was ashamed of him. I was protecting something precious. After Jake had made me feel like I wasn't enough, I needed to prove to myself that I could build a life worth living on my own terms. The secrecy became harder when the twins started talking and asking why they couldn't meet Grandma and Grandpa. I made excuses about being busy, about living far away, about waiting for the right time. The truth was, I was scared that my own family would think I'd married William for his money, just like I was sure Jake's family would. 3 years after my divorce, I was living my quiet, happy life when an elegant cream-colored envelope arrived at my apartment. Yes, I still kept my old apartment as an office and mailing address, another part of maintaining my double life. The invitation was for Jake's wedding to someone named Sophia Martinez. The envelope was addressed in calligraphy, and everything about it screamed expensive, but it was the handwritten note inside that made my blood run cold. Laura, I wanted to personally invite you to share this special day with us. I know the divorce was hard, but I hope you found happiness in your new life. It would mean so much to have you there. Jake. I sat in my car outside the apartment building reading that note over and over. On the surface, it seemed kind, even generous. But I knew Jake, and I knew this was calculated. He wanted me there so everyone could see the contrast. Successful Jake with his beautiful young wife, and poor Laura, the ex-wife who couldn't even afford to live in a decent neighborhood anymore. When I got home to William and the twins, I was quiet during dinner. William noticed immediately. "What's wrong, love?" I showed him the invitation. He read it carefully, then looked at me with concern. "Do you want to go?" "Part of me does," I admitted. "Part of me wants to show him that I'm not the broken woman he left behind. But another part of me thinks this is exactly what he wants. He's trying to publicly humiliate me." William was quiet for a moment, then said, "What if we went together? What if we showed him exactly who you became after he lost you?" The idea terrified and thrilled me at the same time. "William, that would mean telling everyone. My family, his family, all our old friends. Are you ready for that?" He smiled and pulled me close. "Laura, I've been ready since the day I met you. The question is, are you ready to stop hiding how amazing your life is?" The next morning, I called Amy and asked her to come over. When she saw William and the twins at breakfast, her jaw literally dropped. "Laura, what the hell is going on? Who are these people?" I introduced her to my husband and children and watched my sister go through every emotion from shock to hurt to anger. "You've been married for 2 years and have kids, and you didn't tell me. I thought we were close." The conversation was painful, but necessary. I explained my fears, my need to prove I could build something real, my terror that people would think I was a gold digger. Amy listened, cried, yelled at me a little, then hugged me fiercely. "You idiot," she said. "I would have been so happy for you, but I understand why you were scared. Jake really messed with your head." That afternoon, I called my parents. The conversation was even harder. My mother cried, asking why I hadn't trusted them with the truth. My father was hurt that I thought they would judge me, but eventually they understood. "We're proud of you," Sweetheart, my mom said. We're proud of who you've become and how you rebuilt your life. The hardest part was explaining to Emma and Ethan why they were suddenly going to meet all these new family members. Mommy was scared too. Tell people how happy we are, I said. Simply. But now we're ready to share our family with the world. William and I spent the week before Jake's wedding planning our appearance carefully, not because we wanted to show off, but because we wanted to do this with dignity. I bought a silver dress that was elegant without being flashy, and William wore a simple black suit. The twins had matching outfits in cream and gold. The goal isn't to upstage anyone, William reminded me the night before the wedding. The goal is for you to walk in there with your head held high, knowing exactly who you are and what you've built. I barely slept that night. 3 years of wondering what I would say to Jake if I saw him again. 3 years of imagining how it would feel to face the people who had witnessed my humiliation. But I wasn't the same broken woman who had signed those divorce papers. I was stronger now, happier, and surrounded by people who loved me for exactly who I was. The morning of the wedding, as I watched William help Emma with her shoes while Ethan showed him a drawing he'd made, I realized something important. This wasn't about proving anything to Jake or getting revenge. This was about celebrating how far I'd come and sharing my happiness with the world. We arrived at the luxury hotel in our white limousine at exactly 2:30 p.m., 30 minutes after the ceremony was scheduled to start. I wanted to make sure Jake was already married before we made our entrance. This wasn't about disrupting his wedding day. It was about appearing at the reception when all the old faces would be there to see me. The valet opened our door and William stepped out first, then helped me and the twins. I could feel eyes on us immediately. The hotel lobby was filled with wedding guests having cocktails before the reception, and I recognized so many faces from my old life. Jake's aunt, Margaret, was the first to spot me. She did a literal double take, looking from me to William to the twins, clearly trying to process what she was seeing. Within minutes, word had spread through the lobby. Laura's here. Jake's ex-wife is here. Who is that man? Are those her children? I walked through the crowd with William's hand on my back and the twins holding our other hands. I smiled and nodded at people I recognized, but didn't stop to chat. I wanted to find Jake and Sophia, to congratulate them properly, then enjoy the reception without drama. We found them in the main ballroom, greeting guests in a receiving line. Sophia was stunning in a white ball gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Jake looked handsome in his tuxedo, but I felt nothing when I saw him. No anger, no hurt, no residual love, just a mild curiosity about the man I used to know. When it was our turn in the receiving line, Jake's face went through a series of expressions. First, confusion, then recognition, then shock. Laura, wow, you look, he trailed off, staring at William and the twins. Congratulations, Jake, I said warmly, extending my hand to both him and Sophia. You both look beautiful. This is my husband, William, and our twins, Emma and Ethan. Jake shook William's hand automatically, but I could see him trying to process the information. Husband, twins, the woman he had left behind because she wasn't successful enough was married to someone else and had children. Sophia was gracious, smiling and complimenting my dress, but I could see her curiosity, too. This was clearly not the broken ex-wife she had been told about. It's wonderful that you could come, Jake finally managed. I wasn't sure if you'd be able to make it. I wouldn't have missed it, I replied. I wanted to thank you in person. Thank me for the divorce, I said simply. It led me to William, to my children, to the life I was meant to have. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing. Before Jake could respond, we moved along the line. I could feel his eyes on us as we walked away, and I heard him asking someone Who did she say her husband was? The wedding reception was elegant and expensive, exactly what I would have expected from Jake. William and I found our table and settled in with the twins, who were fascinated by all the flowers and fancy decorations. Throughout dinner, I noticed people staring at our table and whispering. Jake's business partners kept glancing over at William, and I could see recognition dawning on some faces. Finally, Jake's college roommate, Mark, approached our table. "Excuse me," he said to William. "Aren't you William Chen, the tech guy? I read about your company's merger in the Wall Street Journal last month." William nodded politely. "Yes, though I try not to talk business at weddings." Mark's eyes went wide. Then he looked at me with new understanding. "Laura, your husband is William Chen, the billionaire." I smiled calmly. "Yes, we've been married for 2 years." Word spread through the reception like wildfire. Within an hour, Jake's business associates were approaching our table, trying to network with William. People who had ignored me or pied me for 3 years suddenly wanted to know all about my life, my business, my family. The most surreal moment came when Jake's mother approached me during the father-daughter dance. "Laura, dear," she said, sitting in the chair next to me. "I had no idea you had remarried into someone so successful. We prefer to keep our private life private," I replied. She looked uncomfortable. "I hope you know that Jake always spoke well of you after the divorce. He wanted you to be happy." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Mrs. Patterson, Jake invited me here hoping I would look pathetic compared to his new life. We both know that, but I'm genuinely glad he found happiness with Sophia. She seems lovely." Jake's mother had the grace to look embarrassed. "Perhaps we misjudged the situation." As the evening wound down, Jake finally approached our table. William was dancing with the twins on the dance floor, spinning them around while they giggled. It was such a perfect picture of happiness that I felt my heart overflow with gratitude for my life. "Laura," Jake said, sitting down beside me, "can we talk?" Of course. He was quiet for a long moment watching William with our children. "He seems like a good man. The best man I've ever known," I said. "Honestly, I need to ask, how long have you been married?" 2 years next month. Jake did the math in his head. "So, you met him about 6 months after our divorce was final." He nodded slowly. "And you never thought to mention that you were married to a billionaire, that you had kids?" I turned to face him fully. "Jake, you made it very clear during our divorce that I wasn't successful enough to be part of your new life. Why would I share my happiness with someone who told me I would never amount to anything?" He flinched. "I never said that." "Yes, you did. The night before you filed for divorce, you said I was holding you back, that I would never fit into your successful world." I kept my voice calm and factual. "You were probably right at the time, but you were wrong about what I was capable of becoming." Jake looked genuinely upset. "Laura," I walked